Yeah. All right, cool. All right. Yeah, a couple interesting things. A lot of conversation around definitely within AI and with what's happening with the school in Arizona, and what's happening as far as using AI for teachers for 2 hours a day was a update I saw in some of the articles that I think was missing initially, and in some of the more like headline clickbait stuff that I think I saw originally. But there was actually a piece that said that there's going to be 2 hours of kind of direct focus instruction that would be done by AI, but the rest of the school day would be relegated to like, life skills. I haven't seen any definition of what that means, what those are, but that's interesting. Secondly, I saw a couple interviews recently that made me think a lot. The first one was with the Free Press um, with Sam Altman, and like one of the interesting parts about that uh, was talking about artificial super intelligence, which I don't really hear a lot of people talking about, at least not in depth or at length at this point in time. But basically, I think it's a simple way to explain, I guess, what it even is uh, the point where AI kind of surpasses human intelligence to where it almost becomes like an independent thing, and it doesn't need necessarily humans. Uh, what I find really intriguing about that is where we currently are with data sources and information, where I'm pretty sure most people, if you've been dabbling in a lot of this stuff, is you've seen the idea around data information synthetic is the word I'm trying to think of. It's like synthetic data information or synthetic data sources or synthetic data, right? Meaning instead of pulling information from people, from human studies, from real life, real world scenarios and situations and environments and things like that, it's basically that is all being created and kind of produced. Excuse me, I'm still getting over illness. As if you tuned into the first episode of The Glitch and you saw me with my tea and all that, so I'm working through that. It's been a few days, but I'm good now. So thinking about that, a point where the technology, right, is basically operating in the absence of us, and we really don't necessarily have as strong a hand on it in terms of control, and it can kind of maneuver. So that's something to think about because it's seeming as though that type of thing is really not that far-fetched and too far off anymore. I also saw a recent interview, and this is just for timestamp purposes, January 9th, 2025. I believe an interview with the Nvidia CEO came out yesterday, January 8th, or maybe January 7th. And I found that really intriguing, especially when it comes to narrative and even really looking at some of the work that I'm doing with Black AI media in particular, thinking about storytelling and holding on to history and being able to actually tell one's story, one's narrative, and be included in history and also really be included in the future. Because one of the things that he said was basically that where we are right now in technology with AI, um, that we are about a year and a half into the reshaping, reinvention, I believe the word he used was of computing. All right, we're about a year and a half into that. And what that made me think about immediately before even thinking about like the technology and growth and all of that um was more about people. And the stories, particularly the stories that we got later than we should have, right? Like Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and like, if you've seen Hidden Figures, any of these types of pieces of history that were either omitted or left out or somebody stumbled upon or whatever it is. Even, I mean, there's still plenty of stories, people, situations that we're not aware of that I'm sure will come out and then it'll be a movie and it'll be a whole thing. But like, how difficult was it just for the value add of that particular group, right? Definitely think about in that case, women, Black women, as computers at NASA. But for now, we're looking at what we're hearing in this day and age of a reinvention of computing. So my concern really lies more so with, well, what happens to the stories and the contributions that have already kind of been like buried, right? It's already difficult enough to dig and uncover the amazing offerings and things like that that people have already provided. Whereas now we're adding like another layer, albeit potentially great for going into the future and building. Well, not saying anything necessarily about like the potential of what technology and what we're looking at now can do for humanity in the future, right? Because I mean, I don't know if anybody else has really read. I've been trying to post it and share it with folks, but um, I wasn't even aware and recently became privy to the fact that there were two AI innovations that were awarded Nobel Prizes last year, 2024, right? One for physics and one for my original field of study, which is chemistry. Both having a correlation to potential benefits in the healthcare field, which is major. But when we talk about, again, a lot of the disparities, issues, when we talk about the human core component of it, right? The hashtag representation matters. And for me, that not just being a hashtag and working with and uplifting and highlighting Black people in the space in particular, when it comes to AI and tech through Black AI media, this just shows to me that there is still, and I don't know if this is now more than ever, but there still is a high level of importance of ensuring that these stories are told and that people don't get lost whenever it comes to uh, the progression and in the movement of all these amazing things and developments and advancements that we see, because there are contributions that are just not ever considered or added or given credence. So I'm looking at it like, yes, that is very exciting looking into the future, and could also, again, you could live on both side, either side of where we are, the doom and gloom or the, oh, that's amazing, surge forward. But again, me trying to be as objective as possible and say, well, what about the people, right? What about those who might not see necessarily the outcomes of where we go with that? Um, because in most cases we're not going to get their feedback or um and I even thought about it too from the lens and perspective of with a lot of the AI like policy and talking about ethics and things like that. One thing I found to be kind of consistent throughout many things, right, across industry and just society is I've found that there's really kind of like two main demographics or groups of people who we don't listen to enough to kind of drive things in the way that we my generation, right, would hope to or are the way that we say that we are hoping for things to go. And those two groups of people are young people, children, and our elders. I don't think that we listen to either of them enough, right? Everybody kind of in the middle. I'm lumping myself in, 30s. Um, we try to come up with all the solutions, and we might scoff at the elders and say, "Oh, you're outdated. You don't know what's going on." And same thing with the youth and say, "Oh, you don't know what's going on. You haven't lived enough." But if we really stop and think about it, all the elders have essentially the majority stake in terms of wisdom, right? I once heard an older woman say, "You don't get to be my age being stupid," right? Just respectfully, which I'm like, okay, yeah. But at the same time, in terms of just a hunger for understanding and growth and also really I mean imagination and I ideas and things like that. Like nobody nobody goes beyond what a children or what children or what a child can dream up. So why not have that those groups also be have a voice in what's going on. And I think that in a lot of cases that's not really what we see. Um, so we end up having kind of an unbalanced thing where it's a lot of we guess and we think we know what people need and want without necessarily getting it directly from them or hearing it from them and maybe not even believing. The people don't know what they want until you put it in front of them type of thing. Um, but no dog in that fight. Just something I've noticed. Maybe we should consider how we actually approach that. But with that, yeah, with this particular episode of The Glitch, I wanted to really just jump in and talk specifically more about like um, the absence of conversation that I've been seeing related to like super intelligence. I know I mean, maybe it's a newer thing, um, but it's something that should be included. And then also the importance related to narrative, regardless of where everything goes, looking into the future and advancement. There are definitely plenty of stories and contributions that should not be overshadowed, omitted, or lost. And again, the goal for primarily the couple of campaigns at Black AI Media, one being the Road to 100, with interviewing 100 Black professionals globally in the tech and AI space, as well as the I Am the Algorithm campaign, which is pretty much ongoing, global Black history essentially, in a written format that highlights, an individual who has made amazing contributions or is doing something great in the space, and they're just they get a light shown on them. And you can go back and always check that out at blackadmedia.com. But again, not losing sight of you know the human aspect of things because we all know that this is not slowing down. There's a surge. It's going to continue to push. Technology is everything right now, essentially. AI is, I think I heard it stated in the interview I mentioned, AI is like the single most important piece of technology that we've seen in like our generation. No argument. So for myself, I'm considering, what am I doing to ensure that not only am I being included in having a hand in what's happening, but also thinking about like, well, what am I producing and who am I also collaborating with to be able to put something together that will benefit somebody outside of just me or whoever I'm connected with. So hopefully those things all kind of continue to pan out. I know social impact is a major push for many folks, and it's necessary here. But at the same time, just don't lose sight of what's actually important. That's what I'm continuing to tell myself, and it's pretty much all I got for right now. But look into everything that I mentioned, artificial superintelligence, looking into um, what's going to happen, I think, more so with potential for things like the Nobel Prizes. Like, I am looking at a prediction personally that, I mean, maybe there could be a move on a Nobel Prize for math just because of all of the, I mean, algorithmic work and, I mean, all the computation that takes to produce a lot of these systems. I mean, there's clearly a lot of mathematics there that, I mean, if the right, I think, if the right task is met, or for lack of a better word, then I mean, that could be an argument for whatever that project is, to be ushered in, and then continue to looking at like what's happening as far as like education goes, um, and where implementation is happening, because that's what's happening now. I know from what I've seen, education is usually kind of slow on things, adoption, implementation. It usually kind of takes like a guinea pig type of approach where we'll see like some kind of like trailblazer stuff happening and it'll work, and then other entities or institutions will kind of follow suit uh, once it's kind of proven. But there's a little more barrier to entry whenever it comes to that. So, uh, but I'll leave it at that, and I'll catch everybody next time. Peace.